Today on Straight Talk Africa, U.S. President Barack Obama warns African leaders who cling to power and refuse to step down, saying that term limits are good for democracy and that shifting constitutional goalposts often has a disastrous effect. That's coming up next right here on Straight Talk Africa. Hello, welcome to Straight Talk Africa, live from the Voice of America studios here in Washington. It's Wednesday, July 29th. I am Shaka Ssali. My colleague and social media reporter, Maria Majaro, will rejoin us next week. Today, we'll talk about the urgent need of presidential term limits in Africa. And coming up later in our STA inbox, our audience has weighed in on our topic through emails, tweets, and Facebook comments. And we'll reveal some of them later. But first, U.S. President Barack Obama said Tuesday that democracy in Africa was threatened when presidents did not stand aside at the end of constitutional term limits, and no one should be president for life. My colleague, Paul Ndiho, has more.
Since becoming the President of the United States, Barack Obama has visited more than 5 African countries. Most recently, he traveled to Kenya and Ethiopia. Speaking to a larger audience at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Mr. Obama used his podium to reiterate his broad and ambitious policy of engagement towards sub-Saharan Africa.
When I first came to sub-Saharan Africa as a president, I said that Africa doesn't need strong men, it needs strong institutions. Here, your 54 nations pursue a common vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa.
Millions of Africans and friends of Africa around the world had called on President Obama to use this opportunity to speak directly to African leaders who refuse to leave office once their constitutional mandates are over.
Africa's democratic progress is also at risk when leaders refuse to step aside when their terms end. Let me be honest with you, I do not understand this. I am in my second term. It has been an extraordinary privilege for me to serve as the President of the United States. I cannot imagine a greater honor or a more interesting job. I love my work. But under our Constitution, I cannot run again. I actually think I'm a pretty good president. I think if I ran, I could win. But I can't. So there's a lot that I'd like to do to keep America moving, but the law is the law. And no one person is above the law, not even the president. I'll be honest with you, I'm looking forward to life after being president. I won't have such a big security detail all the time. It means I can go take a walk. I can spend time with my family. I can find other ways to serve. I can visit Africa more often. The point is, I don't understand why people want to stay so long. Especially when they've got a lot of money. And just as the African Union has condemned coups and illegitimate transfers of power, the AU's authority and strong voice can also help the people of Africa ensure that their leaders abide by term limits and their constitutions. Nobody should be president for life.
For example, the Rwandan constitution allows only 2 terms, but Rwandan lawmakers earlier this month approved a measure that would pave the way for President Paul Kagame to seek re-election when his second term ends in 2017. In neighboring Burundi, President Pierre Nkurunziza recently won his bid for a controversial third term. Meanwhile, in Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, Uganda's longtime leader, set the precedent in 2005 when he secured a change to the constitution allowing him a third term. He's now serving a 4th term and most likely to run again in 2016. Other long-time rulers include Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe, in power since 1980. Cameroon's Paul Biya, in power since 1982. José Eduardo dos Santos, President of Angola, in power since 1979. And Teodel Obiang Nguema of Equatorial Guinea has also been in power since 1979. However, there is some good news. The concession of defeat by former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan after elections in March marked the first time in the nation's history that an incumbent leader had been ousted at the ballot box. Among other African countries working to consolidate and deepen democracy include Tanzania, Ghana, Liberia, Senegal, Botswana, and a few others with varying degrees of accountable governance. Paul Ndiho, VOA News.
Thanks, Paul, for that report. Now, joining us here in our Washington studios are two distinguished guests. Major Robert Higiro, retired, a former Rwandan army officer. He currently serves as the Burundian coordinator for Democracy in Rwanda Now, a nonpartisan network of Rwandan organizations and individuals that advocate democratic governance in their homeland. I have to say that I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled for having the opportunity to host you for the first time on Straight Talk Africa, Major Higiro.
It's my pleasure, Shaka.
You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And of course, we have Dr. Kenneth Mwenda, adjunct professor of law at American University's Washington College of Law, based here in the nation's capital. And of course, I say for you, it's always a pleasure.
My honor, Shaka. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, and we're glad that you could make it just in time.
Indeed.
Well, last but not least, we hope to be joined by Willy Sharita, world press photojournalist and blogger on Rwandan politics. We expect him to join us via telephone link-up from Austin, Texas. Well, later in the program, of course, we'll give you, the audience, a chance to call and talk with our guests. The number to call is 202-619-3111. US country code is 1. Before we begin today's discussion, let's get an update on the implications of the recent presidential poll in Burundi. And for that, I am joined by my colleague, Frederic Nkundikije, managing editor of the Voice of America's Central Africa Service. Good afternoon, Fred.
Good afternoon, Shaka.
How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Terrific. Now, based on the assessment from your sources on the ground in Burundi, to what extent was this election really legitimate?
I would say that for the millions of Burundians, 69% who voted for Nkurunziza, the election was legitimate. But obviously, it was not for those who were against the third term for President Nkurunziza. But again, we also have to go back and look at what constitutional experts said. There is this law professor in Bujumbura who teaches at the University of Burundi. His name is Pascal Wanghara. He, based on his lecture of the Constitution, he said that Nkurunziza had the right to the term. Some people call it second, while others call it third term.
I understand. But what about the election itself, really? Because given reports, for example, that the opposition did not really have a chance, for example, to sell their message anywhere. This because the independent radio, television, and other media organizations, of course, were not working. Based on that and the fact that they couldn't interact with the masses honestly, do you have a problem with those who say that this, may in fact have been a selection as opposed to an election?
Yes, indeed. We can say that opposition political leaders were not given a chance to campaign like the president did. But for those who really know the politics in Burundi, that is one factor. There are so many factors that have led the country to the situation it is in now.
Now, you know, of course, that this is not the only election that has recently been boycotted by the opposition. We did have a boycotted election in Sudan. I am talking about Khartoum, where, in fact, President Omar al-Bashir ended up running against himself and winning by a landslide. And yet, it looks like the international community seems to have endorsed that type of election. Any particular reason why this particular election in the Burundi seems to be unique?
It is unique in the sense that most opposition political parties did not participate. But again, we have to recall here that it is not the first time. In 2010, after the local elections, most opposition political parties decided to actually withdraw. And, they announced that they were not participating because obviously there were allegations that the vote had been rigged. But obviously all these international organizations and also these agencies and the countries that have sent observers in the country, including local organizations, they said the elections in 2010 were, legitimate.
I see. Well, thank you very much, Fred Nkundikije of the Voice of America's Central Africa Service, for your insight.
You are welcome, Shaka.
You're most welcome, too. Now, for the Burundian government perspective, we are joined by President Pierre Nkurunziza's senior advisor, Willy Nyamitwe, who joins us live via Skype from the Belgian capital, Brussels. Good evening, Mr. Nyamitwe.
Good evening, Shaka, and good evening to all the persons who are following us on social media and listening to us.
Well, thank you very much for joining us finally, Mr. Nyamitwe, because I really have to apologize because the last time you were supposed to be on this program, I believe was a couple of days before the presidential poll, but unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control, we were unable to interact with you.
Yeah, I can understand. No problem.
I hope you'll find some space in your beautiful Bujumbura heart to forgive us for that.
Yes, and we hope you visit Burundi very soon because Burundi is a very nice country waiting for your visit. Some journalists are coming in Burundi, but we are missing you, Shaka.
Interesting. Any particular reason why you are missing Shaka Ssali, the kid from Kavala, southwestern Uganda?
Because you cannot continue talking about Burundi without visiting Burundi. I think you should come and pay a visit to Burundi and know the other part of the story in Burundi, because some stories that you are getting spread by some social medias or some even some journalists, sometimes they are wrong. So you have to come on the ground, see what is happening really in Burundi.
Very interesting. Now talk to us about the just ended election. Of course, you've been quoted as saying it was peaceful, free, fair, and credible. And yet, many in the international community, in fact, seem to have the opposite view. Yes, they agree it was peaceful, but certainly not credible. Neither was it free. Frankly, what do you say to that?
We understand this is their view, their point of view. This is normal in a democratic system. But if we only, for example, check out the turnout in this election, it's the major element of validation of this election. People were expecting us to fall down into a very huge crisis, a very terrible war, but the war didn't come. So I think people should come back and really recognize they got us wrong, in a wrong way, and understand that Burundians, we wanted to go to elections. We wanted to replace our elected institutions from 2010 by others elected in 2015. So it's our elections, and it belongs to Burundians to really recognize and validate these elections, not strangers or our partners. They cannot come and decide on our behalf.
Now, looking forward, now that the elections are over, what do you intend to do?
What we are going to do now is to to continue. Now the parliament is being set up. We are going to get a new government in coming days, but some discussions are going on to see how we can put in a government of national unity and to continue telling Burundians who fled the country because of rumors to come back in the country. If you go to the border, now there is a very huge traffic of people coming back home because nowhere can be better than home. So people are coming back home because they went away because of only rumors.
Now, when you talk about the possibility of a government of national unity, if you were to talk to us from the deepest, better part of the bottom of your Bujumbura heart and soul, are you sincere about sharing power with your political adversaries, or is it merely, as some would say, a question, frankly, of sharing positions?
No. We are not only sharing positions. In our country, we have our constitution that urges us to put on government of national unity. But unfortunately, to be part of the government, you have to get at least 5% from the legislative elections. So if we look at what happened in Burundi, none of the political parties from the opposition got 5%. So that means also that the new cabinet is going to be 100% made by people from the ruling party, the CNDD, FDD. So we need to share this power with our brothers and sisters from other parties. This is the reason why I think we have to amend the Constitution, especially the Article 129, to get in people from other political parties in the government, and as well as people from maybe the civil society organizations.
Now, in the past, you had a first vice president from the major opposition party, UPRONA, correct?
Yes.
Now, looking at the recent election results, it doesn't look good for UPRONA. How are you going to go about it?
Yeah, it doesn't look good for UPRONA, but about the vice president, this is not a problem. A vice president can come from any other party that is maybe contains the majority in ethnically basis. That is different from the ruling parties or the president. So I think for UPRONA, this is not going to be a problem to get the same post in the upcoming cabinet.
I see. Well, unfortunately, time happens not to be our best ally, so for that, we'll have to stop right there. I would like to thank Willy and Nyamitwe, who joined us live via Skype from Brussels.
Thank you.
You're most welcome, sir. Now, we'll pause for a short break and would like to remind you that Straight Talk Africa is now on the social networking website Twitter. Follow us at VOA Shaka, that's VOA Shaka, and join in on today's discussion with your questions and comments. Don't forget to use the hashtag at VOA, no term limits in Africa, or hashtag VOA term limits. And we are still on Facebook. Just enter the keyword Straight Talk Africa, become a fan, and connect with other friends of the Voice of America. We'll be right back with you, so please don't go away.
Presidential term limits in Africa. Burundi. President Pierre Nkurunziza ran for a controversial third term, which the opposition and the international community say violated the Burundian constitution. But the nation's constitutional court ruled in favor of his position, and he was allowed to run for a third term. On July 21st, Nkurunziza was re-elected. Rwanda. Earlier this month, Rwandan lawmakers approved a measure to pave the way for President Paul Kagame to seek re-election when his second term ends in 2017. Togo. Despite strong opposition, Togolese President Faure Gnassingbé has refused to implement political reforms leading to a presidential term limit. He was re-elected to a third term in April 2015.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. So they're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
This is Straight Talk Africa on the Voice of America. What is your opinion about today's topic? Call us at 202-619-3111. U.S. country code 1. When you call, remember the following. Ask only one question, keep your comment brief, and turn down the volume on your radio or television. Now let's return to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Gideyu-Ewart, and welcome back. And today, we are talking about the urgent need for presidential term limits in Africa. Our distinguished guests are Major Robert Higiro, retired but certainly not tired, a former Rwandan army officer. He currently serves as the region coordinator for democracy in Rwanda now, a nonpartisan network of Rwandan organizations and individuals that advocate democratic governance in their homeland. Dr. Kenneth Mwenda, adjunct professor of law at American University's Washington College of Law, based here in the nation's capital. And last but not least, we hope to be joined by Willy Sharita, World Press photojournalist and blogger on Rwandan politics. We expect him to join us via telephone link-up from Austin, Texas. Well, gentlemen, once again, of course, I am profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have the two of you in the studios here in Washington.
You're welcome, Shaka.
You're most welcome. Now, let's talk about your homeland of Rwanda. Your homeland of Rwanda, do you miss it very much?
Indeed, I do.
Really?
I think everybody misses his homeland always.
Terrific. Now, there is a saying, of course, that your country happens to have a uniquely gifted leader by the name Major General Paul Kagame, and of course there is a process ongoing to help amend the constitution so that his unique skills can, of course, continue to be in service as far as the country is concerned. What is your reaction to that?
Thank you for that question, Shaka. You know, there's a saying that when I changes to we, even illness changes to wellness. Mm-hmm. So when Mr. Kagame hijacked what the RPF fought for since the death of Major General Frederic, it has been a disaster throughout. It's about him. It's about him. It's not about the Rwandans, as all of us fought for. I mean, it was a genuine cause for the Tutsis who had been out of the country for over 30 years to fight back home because the peaceful, means that we always, talk about had failed. Mm. And it's unfortunate today that it has become, a project for somebody. It's about President Kagame. He has become a unique president. He's all over the world. He's achieved the millennium goals, which are really difficult to achieve because everything that is being, thrown out there to the IMF, to the World Bank, to these Western governments, it's all faked up. It's stage managed. The demonstrations we see in Kigali today about the petitioning of change of constitution is actually not real. I mean, people are no way going to be in love with Kagame when he's actually killing them. No. When poverty has taken over, Rwandans today have one meal or not even a meal.
Major Higiro, when you talk about what we are seeing in Rwanda not being real, we're talking about here about 3.8 million signatories who petitioned the Rwandan National Assembly, which in turn unanimously has endorsed the idea, and so did the ruling party, the Rwandese Patriotic Front, of which you were a member, which you admired at one point. Yeah. You fought for it. And in fact, you, and including a lot of other Tutsi friends that I have known over the years, I remember them frankly thanking Paul Kagame for having helped them to successfully return to their motherland. So how can you turn around suddenly and say, whatever he has been doing since the death of Major General Frederic, which was October, I think, 2nd, 1990, that all he has been doing is self-serving, really?
Yes, I mean, let's be clear here. How do you tell me that you have a group of parties, opposition parties in the country, and they happen to say, oh no, we need President Kagame to continue. So why are they there in the first place? Why do we have opposition parties in Rwanda that are saying the current RPF president should continue? How could you create a political party and you have no leadership ambition whatsoever? But it's because of the fear they live in Rwanda. You know, everybody knows that it's about Kagame. We heard what President Obama said the other day in Ethiopia. He's now trying to change the constitution. The millions you're talking about who petitioned, we have evidence. They send us lists of those who were forced to do it.
Where is that evidence?
We have it. We have given it to the relevant donors.
Is it empirical?
Yes, for sure. And I don't see
incontrovertible, this type of evidence, frankly, that is not liable to falter?
No, even on the social media. I mean, people have been recorded, people have been interviewed by journalists in Rwanda saying, they pay us. We are paid to sign these petitions.
So why didn't you come with some of that evidence today? It would have been good for our audience to interact with it.
Well, next time, it's not the last day, we're going to work on that.
Very interesting.
Yes. So it can't be that President Kagame is the only person who can rule Rwanda or who can lead Rwanda to development, to whatever he wants to take them, wherever he wants to take them.
But in fairness to him, how do you respond to some people who will say, wait a minute, Major Higiro, we have had the same situations, for example, in Senegal, where people went out and voted against Abdul Wade, denied him the opportunity to have a third term. They can tell you other places where it was on the verge of happening and people refused, like his country of Zambia, for example. Frederic, a man who was a new bleed of African democracy, wanted to shift the constitutional goalposts, and civil society in Zambia refused. Malawi, Bakiri Muluzi, tried to do the same thing. Parliament said no. A man called General Olusegun Obasanjo, retired but not tired, also tried to do it in Abuja, but he couldn't go through the National Assembly. So someone might say, how come we are not seeing these voices or hearing these voices in Rwanda? We are not even seeing somebody trying to demonstrate like in neighboring Bujumbura, in Burundi. How do you respond to that?
Yes, well, I mean, where are you going to start from if the two most successful businessmen in Rwanda, Rujugiro Yabatwa, can't step in Rwanda, his property is being taken over by government, when Rwigara Sinapol is killed by the DMI agents, and up to now there's no investigations, by the way.
You're talking about Tribert Rujugiro, the man who has the reputation for having been perhaps the chief financier for the RPF?
Yes. He's now a traitor. His property is being run by the government. They actually established a law because of his property in Rwanda recently. Rwigara Sinapol was killed, and when his daughter and mother came up to look at their father and mother, when they came to check on the body, they found the guy still alive. When they pleaded with the police to take him to hospital, he was taken by the police. When you hear the former chief of spy, Colonel Rejia, killed in South Africa, when you hear former Chief of Staff Kayumba Nyamwasa being shot in South Africa, when you hear everybody being hunted, the dissidents, who is going to sit in that parliament and say, no, Kagame shouldn't continue? People are afraid. Rwanda is a hostage now.
And these were people who were Kagame's comrades, very close comrades.
Yes. So do you want to tell me that the incorporated, Hutus from FDR, like General Warakabije, these parliamentarians are going to sit and say, look here, President, you are done your terms, you should stop? Nobody's going to be able to say that because they know the repercussions. Unfortunately,
time happens not to be our best ally. You're tuned into Straight Talk Africa. We'll have more of a discussion in a moment. But now, here is our letter of the week from Straight Talk Africa Facebook fan in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, who responded to our question of the week.
Our letter of the week is from Paul Okudo of Nairobi, Kenya. He writes, "No term limits in Africa is a slogan that suggests stagnation. One presidential term should be 5 years or less. That gives a fair distribution of power to the tribe-sensitive politics, such as those in my country. 2 terms creates a dominant tribe that hands over power to a pair of safe hands, while the incumbent goes into semi-retirement. 1 term leaves no room for anyone to warm up to the seat as president. It is the hard goals that you meet within 5 years that sets your party apart from the rest."
Like Voice of America on Facebook. Follow VOA on Twitter. Join VOA on our YouTube channel. Like, follow, join VOA.
This is Straight Talk Africa on the Voice of America. Call us now with your questions and comments. The number is 202-619-3111 and the U.S. country code is 1. Call us direct and we'll call you right back. Remember to turn down the volume on your radio or television and keep your comments brief. Now back to Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Giziyu-Ewart, and welcome back to Straight Talk Africa, live from Washington. Despite an alarming trend that a number of African leaders are bending the rules and amending constitution to stay in power, a recent report by Afrobarometer, a nonpartisan Pan-African research organization, indicates that a majority of Africans say they favor presidential term limits. This leads us to our question of the week, which asks, with many Africans favoring presidential term limits, tell us why you think the restrictions are good or bad for your country. Thanks for using all our social media platforms to communicate to us. Let's begin with a comment from Straight Talk Africa Facebook fan, Guma Byuma, Michael in Kabale, Uganda, my own hometown, of course, who writes, term limits are certainly crucial for fragile and young democracies in Africa, like ours in Uganda, to check the powers of the presidency and to ensure focused leadership. Our experience has really manifested that the longer the president stays in power, the more he slumbers and institutions go from good to increasingly bad. Another reminder that we are on Twitter. Use the hashtag VOA no term limits in Africa or hashtag VOA term limits. And if you haven't yet, please follow us at VOA Shaka. And speaking of it, let's go to tweet from Umar Munyagwa in the Ugandan capital Kampala. Term limits are good for leadership. They give a leader a time frame from which to deliver what they promised. We have another tweet from Miserinos from Kamenge, Burundi, who tweets, if you want to be fair and credible, retweet what Obama says on Burundi and tone down on the cherry-picking gentleman. Well, how do you respond to that, Professor Mwenda?
Thanks, Shaka.
You're most welcome, brother.
I think much of what we are seeing in a lot of African countries is a manifestation of underdeveloped democracies. Even in the U.S. historically, if you look at constitutional history of the U.S., it was only tradition. There was no law. It was only tradition from the George Washington era to Franklin Roosevelt.
Right.
That people or presidents observed a 2-year term limit. It was after Franklin Roosevelt went for 4 terms in the U.S.
Correct.
That the 22nd Amendment of the U.S. Constitution was passed to restrict presidents to a maximum of 2 terms. But even the drafting of the U.S. Constitution, if you look at the draft of Section 1 of that 22nd Amendment, the way it's drafted, it talks about holding power. By contrast, if you go to Russia, for example, because we want to make this thing universal and global, it's not an African thing. We find it elsewhere as well. In Russia, for example, Putin came back, and Article 81 of the Russian Constitution, under which Putin came through. I'd like to shift this argument or this discourse more leaning towards more the legal slant than the political slant, because political partisan views will take us into all sorts of ideology. Sometimes we can't even justify them. But from a legal point of view, in Russia, for example, the translation of Article 81 says you can be elected as president for not more than 2 terms in a row. So the interpretation of that statutory provision is that not more than 2 terms in a row. So Putin cooled off and came back.
And of course,
because it was not in a row. There was an intervening period. Now,
but who put in that clause? Right. Was it not under Putin?
Of course, I mean, and this is the argument. It will be interesting to see the type of constitutions. I know Rwanda is now moving towards a common law system. There used to be a civil law system. Burundi is a civil law system. It will be interesting to see what type of constitutions they have. For example, if a president is voted in power within parliament, can the judiciary interpret that as not being a term of office simply because he was elected in parliament and not by the general electorate? So these are questions of jurisprudence.
As you saw in Burundi.
Yes, indeed. And so these are questions of jurisprudence. And even so, one can ask further, does the Constitution provide for the electing of a president in parliament and not in the general, with the general? So if not, then the election was a sham in the beginning. Therefore, one can argue that the man ruled illegally. So those are some of the hypotheticals, but we need to look at the Constitution. What does it say in Burundi? And why did the judiciary rule the way they ruled?
You had 6 justices, in fact, judges ruling unanimously, with the exception of one, of course, who headed for the nearest Rwandan political tall grass. Let me go to Florida 2000.
Yes.
Florida 2000,
yes,
Florida
in the
2000,
US,
where you have a situation, frankly, where you can't declare a winner in that election between George W. Bush and Al Gore.
Right, I remember
And you
that.
bring the case to the Supreme Court.
Right.
And the Supreme Court ends up 5-4 in favor of George W. Bush.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people will say that, in fact, George W. Bush's first term was not an elected president. He was an appointed president by the Supreme Court.
Right.
Could he, in fact, have taken advantage of that and argue that my first term, I was not elected through a universal suffrage?
The U.S. situation is a little bit different. Like I said, if you look at the wording of the 22nd Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, it talks about holding office as president or acting in a capacity as president, not elected, but holding office. So that's a very important distinction. Then you don't go into who elected, where was the person elected. It's a question of just holding office.
I see. Let's move on to a posting from Paul Aki from Yaoundé, Cameroon, who writes, presidential term limits are good, and it's a key feature of democracy. Term limits enhance regime change. Power alteration is a significant feature of democracy. Term limits prevent arbitrary and violent leadership. Power alteration through term limits helps to check corruption and abuse use of office by incumbents. Very interesting, because he's from Cameroon anyway, where, of course, you have Paul Biya, who has been in the power since 1982, and in fact went on to change the constitution so that he could hang on to power. And another Facebook comment comes from Tutu Shongwe of Kubuta. She went Swaziland, who writes, disregarding presidential term limits has resulted in civil wars and coups, forcing a larger number of civilians into refugee status. An absolute leader has to rule for as long as they live. Too many cooks spoil the broth. Very interesting. And here is one more Facebook comment, which comes from Savio Sakala of Lusaka, Zambia, who writes, presidential limits are good because they provide a mechanism to hold non-performing leaders accountable and embrace new leadership. Without term limits, the presidency can degenerate into a monarchy and authoritarianism. Well, very interesting, Major, especially for the gentleman from, of course, perhaps one of the world's last absolute monarchs, Swaziland. He's saying that, in fact, you don't need term limits because, of course, his king does not need term limits. He says they're not good. They cause people, in fact, to run into exile. Do you know of any example of that?
Where term limits force people to go to exile?
Yes.
It's vice versa. I mean,
too many cooks are bad, he says.
Yes, I mean, the cause of violence and poverty and this illegal takeover of power, it comes from staying for too long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always like to talk about...
But is that really true? Because let's face it, I mean,
yes,
you got parliamentary systems which allow you to go on for as long as your political party or a coalition of parties that decides to choose you to be the prime minister, you continue moving on. Just like Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore, 31 years in power, no violence. In fact, development.
In fact,
from third world to first world.
In fact, I was going to weigh in on that, Shaka. I think one issue that is important, you know, I agree entirely with what President Obama said at the African Union. He was absolutely right.
But why is he right?
Why he's right? Certainly out of a population of 13 or whatever million, you don't expect one guy to be the most intelligent forever. And you see the problem with
But if he is not intelligent, then how come nobody
he's not
tells
only,
that
he's
person
not,
that, by the way, you're not, because Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni is on record, in fact, saying that he is the only man who has the vision thing.
Okay, I'm coming to that. Actually,
and nobody has, has contradicted him. Why?
Very often what happens in a number of these countries, Africa, let's take Africa in particular, you have a lot of political sycophants around the head of state who make the head of state believe he's the only guy who can do this because they stand to gain out of the system. So sometimes it's the political sycophants who actually motivate the president to stay on and not leave power.
How do they
because they stand to lose out.
How do they gain out of the system? Is he like a sort of cooperation
He has given them jobs.
Or an ATM?
He has given them jobs. If the opposition take over power, definitely they will lose those jobs. So they have every incentive to actually thwart the opposition. And, there was the issue of talk of military coups. There's a lot of literature on military coups, especially in the 70s, which was written by people like Ruth Thirst.
Right.
The causes of military coups in Africa. We are seeing pockets of, bits of that.
That's
but the question now...
Ruth First, the wife of Silovo.
Yes, exactly. So there's a lot of literature on military coups. But what is more worrying is whether we are returning to the era of one-party state through this endless sort of perpetual, political leadership, if you will, in Africa. And I think that's a very important question that we need to look at. Is Africa reverting to one-party states through perpetual leaders?
Look at Ethiopia.
Yes.
Look at Ethiopia. The ruling party has 100% seats.
Right.
In both houses.
Right.
You are talking about a one-party state here, which is called a democracy. I mean, how can you possibly, talk like that? Well, that does it for today's social media segment. Just a reminder that we appreciate all the feedback, whether it's in social media form or using other means to communicate to us. Please keep them coming, and if you are a new fan, drop us a line at africatv@voanews.com. Once again, our email address is africatv@voanews.com, or post your comment on our Facebook page. Enter the keyword Straight Talk Africa. Be sure to visit us online at voaafrica.com, or you can join our YouTube channel, subscribe to VOA TV to Africa, and follow us on Twitter at VOA Shaka. Now let's take a look at what's on tap for next week's program.
Next week on Straight Talk Africa, we'll introduce you to some of the continent's brightest minds and its next generation of leaders as we spotlight the 2015 class of Mandela Washington Fellows. That's next week, right here on Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Gizui-Iwat, and a reminder that you are tuned into Straight Talk Africa. To participate in our discussion, please call us at 202-619-3111. The US country code is 1. We'll continue our discussion in a moment, so please don't go away. And I gather that we have to go to the lifeline of the show.
Presidential term limits in Africa. Burkina Faso. In October 2014, Burkina Faso's president, Blaise Compaoré, was forced to resign and flee to neighboring Ivory Coast after tens of thousands of citizens demonstrated in the streets over a controversial parliamentary vote that would have extended his 27-year reign. Zimbabwe. In March 2013, a new constitution was passed in a referendum vote, setting a maximum of 2 5-year terms for the president, starting with the next election. But it is not retroactive, so President Robert Mugabe, if elected, could rule for another 2 terms. Senegal. In 2012, voters ousted Senegalese President Abdoulaye Wade as he sought a 3rd term. He had changed the constitution during his first term, which he then argued didn't count against the new 2-term limit. After months of sporadic protests, Wade was voted out.
We are able to touch on things that are important to people on an everyday basis. We hope that our viewers are getting inspired when they watch our show. They're getting a view of the world from a different perspective, things that perhaps are not in their immediate vicinity. Today, I could put in on the show something that is a little different, a little unique, and this gives me that inspiration to come to work.
If you like today's show, please write and tell us what you think or give us some suggestions. Be sure to tell us what station you're tuned into. Our address, Straight Talk Africa, Voice of America, 330 Independence Avenue Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20237 USA. Or send us an email at africatv@voanews.com. Log on to our website at voaafrica.com. Or post your comments on Facebook. Keywords Straight Talk Africa.
Thank you very much, Esther Gizui-Iwat. And of course, this is Straight Talk Africa, coming to you live from Washington. I gather that I have to go to the lifeline of the show, which are the telephone callers. And good evening, Kenneth from Zambia. You're most welcome to Straight Talk Africa.
Good evening, Dr. Shaka.
Well, the doctor without a clinic is terrific, hugely terrific. How are you today, Kenneth?
Very well, thank you. Very well, thank you. What about yourself?
I am hugely terrific, hugely terrific. What is your question, Kenneth?
My question is, especially for Zambia,
Mm-hmm.
When a sitting president dies, after 3 months we have the presidential by-election, and then the first president has a mandate of 5 years. Now, when he dies before the 5-year period, then the other one takes over. Now, there is a confusion. We want to know the constitution provision there. How long should this one stay? Should he serve the remaining period, or should he go for the 5-year period? There we need clarification in Zambia.
Thank you very much. And of course, you have got your own brother right here, also known as Kenneth. Kenneth Mwenda, what about that? I know you have dealt with that issue before, from right here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the call, and thank you, Shaka. Under the current constitution, the 1996 constitution, with I think a subsequent amendment, the current president is eligible to stand and be re-elected. But this term that is finishing off will count as his first term. So to answer that question, similarly, former President Rupia Banda wanted to run for presidency. He could only have run, if he won, he could have only been powered during the transition period and nothing more beyond that. So when you take over the presidency under the Zambian constitution, as an acting president, you're elected as a president, then you finish off the term that your predecessor was serving, and that counts as a term.
But why not make an amendment on that, really? Zambia is not a particularly rich country.
Indeed.
And you have had the dubious, frankly, privilege of losing at least 2 presidents in less than 15 years.
Yes, Shaka, I agree with you entirely. I was in Zambia and on radio. I was being interviewed when we lost President Sata. And that really was my argument. You cannot have 2 elections in 3 months. It's very costly. But there are always partisan views of people who have stakeholder interest in these things. And they will not agree, not because the argument is not smart or intelligent enough, but because they stand to gain out of the whole thing. This is an opportunity for them to try it out.
Very interesting. Let's go to West Africa. We go to Nigeria. Good evening, Buva. You're most welcome. Straight Talk Africa.
Good evening, Shaka. It's been a longest period of time.
Thank you, my brother. I am hugely terrific, and I hope you're doing better than me.
I'm so good. Now, sir, my question has to do with, we know America is a pioneer of democracy in the world. Now, what is America doing towards constitutional corruption that is taking place in Africa, especially in Zimbabwe, Rwanda, Burundi, where constitution has been maneuvered to some certain extent? A president should remain in power for infinite years. State blesser has been Buba Umar Riaza from Badarawa in Kaduna, Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Buba Umar from Kaduna. Let me come to you. You've been to Kaduna before anyway, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Why don't you go for that? I know that you are not, of course, a member of the United States government, but perhaps you could answer it from the perspective of what you would like to see the international community about that. It's not just read about President Obama in Addis Ababa yesterday, talking the talk without walking the talk, so that Africans can walk the walk.
Yes. I mean, Africans have to realize that United States' position on democracy is very clear. They do have their own, interests when it comes to foreign policy in their dealings with other countries. But they are very clear about that. We have discussed with State Department and other institutions in America about what's going on in Africa, and they made it clear. They have the interests, but again, they don't let you go away with tampering with democracy, with the human rights, the freedom for speech, this and this and this.
Do they really? Do they really? Because
yes,
there are a lot of people, in fact, who didn't even want to have President Obama in Addis Ababa. Because in their view and their problem, right, there is no democracy or semblance or pretense of democracy in Ethiopia.
I know, but the American position is very clear when it comes to democracy. I mean, they don't alternate it with anything else.
But is talking the talk? Is talking the talk enough?
That's where we come in. That's where the Africans come in.
What can you do in the circumstances of Rwanda where you said no one, for example, can even dare go to the street to pretend to own, frankly, an opinion that may be contrary to the powers that be? How do you go about that?
Yes, we have had demonstrations in Rwanda before, in the capital, and it's all about pro-Kagame or pro-government. It's not against the government. And actually, these people are forced on streets because we have clips of citizens. When you ask them, why are you here? And they say, we came here because of German. We are tired of these Germans there. And actually, the demonstrations are against UK arresting Kenneth Karachi. So they have no idea what's going on. They're just forced on the streets. But
and you can't have a demonstration, for example, in favor of Victor Ingabire?
No, you can't.
Why?
Because...
what happens, in fact, if you try?
Now, the Rwandan situation is a bit tricky because of the horrible genocide. And Mr. Kagame is using the horrible genocide, to stop the critics from even the Western world. And when it comes to Rwanda, the Rwandans inside Rwanda, if you say anything like Victoria Ingabire did, she was just trying to say, look here, the Hutus have to be responsible for genocide, but again, the RPF has to be responsible for the Hutu massacres. And when she did that, that's genocide denial, and you go to prison. I mean, that's a crime. And she's still in prison. The same thing happens to other politicians, other opposition parties. But when we come back to what U.S. is doing, If US has come clear and they have made statements about the ongoing situation, you hosted Greenfield the other week, and she was clear that we are going to engage in this. But probably they are waiting for the president to officially announce that he's going to run. But the parliament and the Senate have already agreed that the change should take over. And they are half of the country now with consultations, and the citizens are saying, oh yes, we should change Constitution 101. And Rwandans should admit that it's up to them now.
But in fairness to President Kagame, he says he has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Do you believe him? You know, we should know.
Tell us. You know him better than us. Tell us.
Yeah, we should know why Kagame is sticking to power.
Why?
He's now a hostage of his own. I mean, he has been committing crimes since 1990. We have the mapping report.
Which crimes? I mean, if he had committed crimes, he would be in The Hague like
war crimes. Yes, war crimes. We have the mapping report of the Congo. We have the experts report. We have the ongoing South African investigations in the murders in South Africa of dissidents. We have evidence.
And you are saying that as a former major in the Rwandese Defense Forces?
Yes, I am.
A guy who, side by side of Kagame, you actually liberated Rwanda?
Yes, I am. Because what I'm saying is 100% correct. We shouldn't expect peace. We shouldn't expect freedom in Rwanda if we don't tackle these issues.
What did you know, and when did you, in fact, come to know about that?
It has been a couple of years. A couple of years. I mean, let's say, okay, if we do admit that genocide took place in Rwanda, who is responsible? Definitely somebody is responsible, and that's the former government Hutu regimes and the militias. If we say on this side that we do admit that we have Hutu massacres, I mean, they're counting in millions, who is responsible?
But even that genocide thing is problematic, frankly, because it seems to lean on who shot the plane.
Where?
Who shot the plane of Habyarimana and Taryamira?
It's public knowledge to RPF members and soldiers that RPF actually brought down the plane.
So if the RPF shot the plane, who gave the order?
Mr. Kagame did.
So how can that happen when Kagame takes the credit for stopping genocide? When genocide is supposed to have, that plane, the shooting of the plane, is supposed to have triggered a genocide.
It did trigger genocide, and probably he knew about it. But we can't blame Kagame entirely.
Did he stop genocide then?
I don't think we did stop genocide because anyway people had died, you know. The main objective was probably taking over power. And when we talk about genocide, it's not like one scene that people are dying in a stadium, so we should go, and people are dying all over the country, and there's no way you're going to operate in a way that you stop the killings.
Unfortunately, time happens not to be a bestseller. I hope we'll have another edition of Straight Talk Africa and discuss a little bit more in that direction. On that note, thanks to our distinguished guests, Major Robert Higiro, retired, but certainly not tired, as you can see, Rwandan Army officer, and the Belgium coordinator for democracy in Rwanda now, and Kenneth Mwenda, adjunct professor of law at American University's Washington College of Law, based here in the nation's capital. Thanks to our affiliate stations, along with our viewers and listeners, we thank you for tuning in. For many of our Voice of America radio affiliates, Learning English is coming up next, and tomorrow morning's Daybreak Africa with James Bate. On behalf of the Voice of America, thanks for tuning into Straight Talk Africa. In the meantime, get better, not bitter, Rwanda and Burundi. And please remember to keep the African hopes alive.